Hi, I'm Kate from Sewing to Overlocking and welcome to my sewing room today. Today's tutorial has come about as a special request for Sandra. So Sandra reached out to me through my socials and asked for some help with a machine that used to be her mum's. It's a BL101, a little blind hemming machine. And she'd done some research on the internet, couldn't find a lot of tutorials or any information on them at all, but found a photo that I'd posted from one of my overlocker classes where a student had brought one along and we'd done a lesson on it. So I said, sure, Sandra, come along to one of my overlocker classes, bring your blind hemmer, and at the end of the class we can do a lesson. Unfortunately, Sandra's in Scotland and I'm in Melbourne, Australia, so doing a face-to-face is not really workable. So this tutorial, Sandra, is for you, or it's for anyone out there who may have one of these machines. I believe they're not in production anymore, but there are a lot out there in the marketplace. So you might have one at home or you might come across one. And believe me, if you sew lots of woven fabrics and need to do lots of hems, these are a fantastic little machine. So they're a little bit different in that they have a horizontal needle. They don't have a vertical needle like a sewing machine or an overlocker. And there's just a few little quirks with them. So as we go through, I'm going to talk you through that and we'll get the stitch looking just beautiful. So let's get started. Okay, so now we're sitting in front of our little BL101 blind hemmer. I just wanted to take you through some of the adjustment dials. So on the left-hand side here, we have the stitch length dial and the tension adjustment dial. So the tension disc sits just behind that dial, and if you adjust it towards you when you're sitting in front of it, towards the plus, that will increase the tension on the thread. Turning it backwards towards the minus will decrease the tension. Really important though, before you start playing with the tension on the thread, to make sure that you have threaded it correctly into the tension disc, and I'll show you that when we get up to threading. On the front of the machine here is a stitch depth dial. So this controls the depth of the needle. I'll just flick open this little door here. So you'll see the needle is sitting here in a horizontal position. So this dial will adjust the amount of depth that the needle's picking up of the fabric when we're forming our stitch. So if you're sewing and it's not catching all your fabric, then you would take that dial to a higher number and that would increase the depth. Or if you're showing too much thread on the front of your hem, then you would take the dial the other way, closer to 0 or 1. Just in the free arm here is a skip stitch function. So I don't actually use this function very much myself because most of the time I'm using sort of suiting weight fabrics. But if you are working with lighter fabrics, this can be a really handy function as it only picks up every second stitch from the front of the fabric. So you'll see it's got little arrows here. So if we flick it from off around to skip, and you would have heard that lock into place. So that then means it's set to just pick up every second stitch from the front, but still form every stitch as the machine's operating. So I'll just pop that back around to off so that I'm all good when I start to sew. This here is the lever, which actually brings the free arm up and locks it into place. It's really important when you do use this that you push it all the way up and it sits right up there really high. It's really easy to think that sort of about there is locked, but make sure that when you have brought it into place that it does sit up nice and high, and that will lock the free arm. I'll bring that back down so I'm all ready to put my fabric under once we're threaded. This is the hand wheel, so if you do need to move the needle position, you can do that by adjusting the hand wheel. And of course you've got your power switch and plug for your power. So I'm just going to swing the machine back around again and we're going to have a look at threading. So I'll try and get that set up there. When you unpack the machine, it has a little arm here, a little silver guide that needs to sit straight up, and the thread goes up through the top of the guide from the spool. And the first place we need to thread, there's a guide here before you get to the tension disc. So what we want to do is take our thread through the hole on the top of that guide from the back to the front of the machine, like so. And then we need to go through that bottom hole as well. And again, we go from the back to the front. So this is our pre-tensioner before it goes through the tension disc. So it forms this sort of really smooth S shape for the thread to run through. Then we go up and into the tension disc that sits there. And I'm just going to turn this around so that you can see this a little clearer. So the tension disc sits here, and what I'm going to do is grab the thread and give it a nice tug, and hopefully you heard that little click, and you can feel the tension on the thread as soon as you pull down on it. So that's a really important step before you start playing with your tension adjustment on the thread. Just make sure it actually is in place in the tension disc. Then our next path for the threading is through this small hole here, just at the base of the tension adjustment. Just trying to keep my hands out of the way. It's always a bit challenging. I'll open that little door too. So we're going to place the thread through that little hole. Now, if I'm very lucky, it's gone through the next threading guide too. I'm not sure how lucky I've been today. So what I'm going to do now is turn the hand wheel, which is going to move the needle forward. And no, I haven't been lucky today. So in the needle carriage is another hole here, which we need to make sure that that thread goes through. So I'm going to pass that through. It's probably a good thing that that hasn't happened, because you can see each threading step. So we're through here and through that little hole there. And then I'm now going to turn the wheel and bring the needle all the way back. And we want to make sure that the little green line on the needle carriage is lined up with the line on the machine. I might just try and bring this in a little bit closer for you, so you can see that there. Just in front of the needle is this guide here, so I'm going to hook that over there like that. Now you'll notice that the needle, you actually have the back of the needle looking at you, so it's quite different to looking at a sewing machine or an overlocker where we're always looking at the front of the needle. This is actually the back of the needle here. And if I can just show you on the door of the needle, if I can get the angle right, you'll see there's a little sticker there that says HA by 1SP and size 11. So that is the needle system that you need to use in this machine. It's really important that you don't put a larger needle in this machine. Size 11 is what it's timed to perfectly. And for most of the fabrics that you're going to be blind hemming, that's all you're ever going to need. Like, you're not ever going to want to blind hem a fabric that's as heavy as a denim or anything like that, because you'd always top stitch that type of fabric anyway. So the last step is to thread the eye of the needle, and we need to go from underneath up through the top here. Gosh, my eyesight's actually okay today. So there we go, that's the threading. It's pretty easy. You just need to make sure that you hit all those spots as you go along. So I'm just going to close up that little door now, and I'll grab my fabric and set up ready to stitch. These pants that I'm ready to hem, fortunately, I guess I should say fortunately, a girlfriend dropped a whole lot of alterations off the other day, and these pants are one of them. So I needed to get this little baby out to be able to finish this job anyway. So I've already cut off my excess hem, and I've overlocked with a wide 3-thread overlock along the edge. If you didn't want to overlock or finish the edge, you can just obviously do a double fold and press it. Now I always press my hem first so it's sitting nicely before I place it under the blind hammer. The advantage of this little free arm is if you are doing small areas like cuffs and things, it's fantastic because you can get really small hems around there nice and easily. So I'm going to place that up under the free arm. Of course, first thing to make sure is that my needle is back at its full position, furthest position, and I'm going to bring the lever up. Now there's a guide here on the front of the machine, which is for the edge of your hem. So it's great if you've done a double fold, you can put the edge of the double fold up against that and that'll work perfectly. I find that sometimes when it's just a single layer and an overlocked edge like this, it can actually make the fabric sort of curl and tuck in underneath. So I tend to guide my my edge just a little bit inside the overlocking, and I find that it keeps my hem sitting a little bit flatter. Now there's a flat section here on the free arm, and this is a great place to rest your hand when you're starting to stitch. So keeping your hand here and keeping the fabric up will actually help feed it through the machine, and it's a nice comfortable place to rest your hand as well. And then making sure that your lever is fully up and locked, and then you put your foot on the pedal and off you go. Just remember to stop and take the pins out before you get to them. Sewing straight's always a challenge for me, but having a camera positioned in front of me makes it even more difficult. Luckily, this is not going to be the finished hem. I've done it in red purely for you to be able to see me threading and to be able to see the finished stitch. So I'll have to pull this out and rethread and repeat it in navy. Coming back around, getting rid of all these pins as we go. Just take the last of those out. Being that the needle system is a HA by 1SP and a size 11, you can use it on knit fabrics too if you would like to. Most of the time I would of course cover stitch and knit, but it's a chain stitch that's being formed, so it will work okay with knit fabrics as well. Okay, so when you get back to where you started, you can actually just trim that thread slightly. And we're going to stitch over the top. Now you can follow the instruction manual, and where you bring the needle back to its furthest position by lining up the green lines, you drop the lever down and you pull the fabric on an angle out the back, and that will lock the stitch off. I'm probably a little bit heavy-handed, and often that doesn't actually work for me, and I find that it doesn't lock off, and then I have to redo the hem. So I like to finish the manual way, which is how I'm going to show you today. So you turn the hand wheel backwards so that the needle is back in its furthest position. What this does is actually unlock the stitch, and this is why I always stitch a few stitches over the top, like 3 or 4 over the top, to give yourself a little bit of leeway. So when you take this out, if it does unravel a little bit, that's okay. So I'm going to drop that arm down and very gently remove my work. Just hold on to that thread because, as I said, it will unravel. And we'll just snip that thread off. And to lock the stitch, to finish, where that loop's sitting there, I'm just going to pop my tweezers through and pick up the thread. So you bring that through and grab it. And then when I pull that firm, that actually locks my stitch and it's finished. And on this side, I have an absolutely beautiful blind hem, even using red thread. You cannot see that at all. So I'm obviously not going to hand these back to her with a red thread around the hem because that would be a bit terrible. So yeah, there's my gorgeous blind hem. As I said, a little bit crooked, but challenges of having the camera positioned in front of me while I'm trying to stitch just makes it a little bit more difficult. So I assure you the finished result of this will be much better. So I hope if you have one of these little blind hemmers that you found this tutorial helpful. If you do have any questions, please reach out. You can contact me through my website, which is sewintooverlocking.com, or through my socials on Facebook and Instagram, which is same name, Sew Into Overlocking. So until I see you next time, happy overlocking, happy blind hemming, stay safe and well, and bye for now.